Hey everybody, welcome to our stream. You are watching the Digital Eclipse Studios channel, and that must mean that we're folks from Digital Eclipse Studios. Hi, my name's Dan Amrich. I'm one of the content editors here. I'm actually the only other content editor here, except for our editorial director, Chris Kohler, here in the middle, and one of our engineers, Dave Reese, over on the side. We will have other people coming in later, but I'm glad you got the secret message that we were doing an illicit stream before Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story, comes out. This is the next interactive documentary in our series called the Gold Master series, where we do deep dives on game history, and we try to give you a collection of games, but also the context for why those games are historically important. Some of you have already told us in chat that you have played the making of Karateka, which was our first in this series. This is going to be number 2, and technically number 0 was Atari 50, the anniversary celebration. You will see similar DNA in that project that we've gone forward with this. But we've got about an hour that we're going to goof off from work with you. And we're going to show you some of the games. We're going to show you some of the timeline, the historical context. We're going to talk about some of the things that had to be done to make Jeff's games a little bit more friendly and accessible for modern hardware and modern players and modern machines. And Chris, you have been living with this fun trivia. The day I was hired is the day that this deal was signed.
Oh my gosh.
Do you remember that?
Right, I do remember that.
Yeah, because I immediately was like, oh, wow, okay. So this has been in the works for about 2 years, and here we are just about to release it digitally on PlayStation, PC, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox platforms on Wednesday. So we're 48 hours away from launch. Are you relieved? Are you tired of talking about this at this point?
Well, you know, what typically happens is we kind of finish a lot of our work on a project. Certainly, I finish a lot of my work on a project because the editorial stuff is really like towards the first half, you know, because so much of the rest of it kind of flows from all of that research and the game selection and the design of how we're going to present all that information. And so I just haven't been working on this for a really long time. And so yeah, now then it's like, you know, a month prior to releasing it, it's like, oh right, you know, getting back into the swing of things in regards to Llamasoft, yeah.
And Dave, how many engineers were on this project?
Well, let's see. Technically, I guess you could say 4, but very much time was split.
Sure.
I mean, some of us had a minor role. I had more of a major role in this project. And Jeremy Williams, who also worked on Atari 50 and Karateka, had a decent role. Had a little bit less than me.
He's less cool. No, we get. Yeah. We can read between the lines.
Of course.
Yes. He's not upstairs. He won't come charging down. He's too polite.
Yeah, and there's always our CTO, Kevin Wilson, who basically has a big role in every project, right?
Sure.
I mean, everything under the hood, deep under the hood, is his responsibility. So, and then also Jason Cirillo, who did a lot of design work and also some of the menu development as well. So
excellent.
Yep. And I mean, one of the frustrating parts of, I think, our particular space in gaming is the sort of the voices that are like, what, you're charging me money for this? It's just emulation. You're just emulating something. But as we hope to show you here, I think in this live stream with Dave here as well, like there is a massive technological lift that goes on underneath the hood to get these games, especially games which we've now done, in 3 separate installments of this interactive documentary series, bringing in not just classic console games, but classic computer games. But to say yes, you can get, be it Karateka with the making of Karateka last year, or all of these games that Jeff Minter has created, you can get it running in an emulator and running on a console, but it doesn't mean you can actually control it or actually interact in any meaningful way with it. And so we'll show you, I think, some of the things that we had to do to get these games into the situation where you can actually take these games that Jeff Minter created on platforms like the Commodore VIC 20 or the Sinclair Spectrum or even the Sinclair ZX81 and get them to a point where you can enjoy them on not only your modern day PC but also your Switch or your Xbox or your PlayStation.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, so from just a sort of a content, perspective here, we did, as you said, Atari 50, and then the making of Karateka, and then this is the next step in the evolution. It's game number 2 in the Gold Master series. It's Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story. Jeff Minter is a iconoclastic video game designer since the days of the early 80s. One of the key figures in that British video game computer game design movement that sort of grew up out of that era where, every console was a dev kit, because every console that the British kids were playing on in the 80s and really even into the 90s, there was this homebrew bedroom coder, bedroom programmer kind of thing happening, and Jeff came up out of that and never wanted to leave that. I mean, he's an auteur. He makes the games by himself. He makes them for himself. If you also enjoy them, great. If not, he's totally fine with that. These are his works made for himself, and he's kept on doing that for 40 years. I mean, when you play Jeff's games today, Atari just released a new game of Jeff's, Aka-R, the remake of Aka-R, and I mean, that is something that is created, as it's all Jeff's creativity, and so ever since, if you've heard of Jeff and you're from America, you've heard of like Tempest 2000 for the Atari Jaguar. And that's awesome. But there's literally dozens of games that lead up to that, that a lot of us just simply didn't experience unless you were, literally living in the UK at the time. And so that's kind of the story that we wanted to tell. Who is Jeff? Where did Jeff come from? What were the things that Jeff does? So if this is your first time seeing one of our interactive documentaries, we're not just dumping you into a list of games and saying, pick a game and start playing it. Everything is arranged like a virtual digital museum on these interactive timelines, and it's all chronological. So we have the early years of Jeff. We have this called the hairy years, where Jeff's sort of signature style and his company Llamasoft continue to evolve and grow. Beyond simply video games, Jeff developed light synthesizers, which were computer programs that were essentially made to be played like virtual instruments. And so we get into that, and then we get up to some of the issues that Jeff and his company Llamasoft had in the 90s. As the video game industry was becoming more commercialized, being that indie bedroom coder became more and more difficult, and we see how Jeff was kind of able to navigate that. So we have, I'll show you a little bit of this. So we've always incorporated, video interviews, even going back to the 1990s with early digital Eclipse projects, interviews with the people who made the games. And so with our interactive documentaries, what we really want to do is we want to show, we want to integrate those, chronologically, and integrate them alongside all of the design documents and the games themselves. So we've got, as usual, roughly an hour of video featurettes sort of interspersed throughout the timelines. In this case, we actually worked with Paul Doherty, who is the director of Heart of Neon, which is an upcoming documentary film, like a straightforward documentary film all about Jeff Minter and his fans and, his indie spirit. And so
Paul's in the chat room, by the way.
Paul's in the chat room.
Paul's
Hi, Paul.
in the chat room, as is Tony Longworth, who's doing
excellent.
the music
Yes.
for this as
Right
well.
on.
So yeah, we were very fortunate to be able to hit into a treasure trove of content that was already moving forward, and we're like, do we have a great context for what you've been working on?
Well, so basically, at the beginning of the project, it was like, well, let's talk with Paul because he's already deep into this documentary. And then it was like, well, gee, he's already interviewed all of the people we could ever consider interviewing for this, and he's probably got all of the footage we could ever consider putting together. So I mean, wouldn't it make sense to work together? And so ideally, what you're getting here though is you're not watching Heart of Neon. You might see there might be some clips that cross over between the two, but ultimately you're watching featurettes that were put together specifically to tell this story, and then Heart of Neon is going to tell a different story. So if you enjoy this, definitely watch Heart of Neon. If you watched Heart of Neon, you probably play this as well. So let's just take a look at a little bit of this. We're all just going to sit in reverent silence here as we watch a bit of the introduction. Jeff's not going to show up though, because this is our introduction. This is like setting the stage. Who is this person? Why are we here?
Think of Jeff Minter without the word legend in my head. He's been around the industry for many years and still makes artful games that have influenced a great number of people.
I always found Jeff and his games fascinating because Jeff was so distinct, and it's just so unlike anyone else. And it's one of the true originals, one of the true iconoclasts in gaming. There's no one else like him. If Jeff didn't exist, you'd have to invent him, right? Because someone has to be that guy.
There aren't enough people like Jeff. He is in his things. What he makes is him. What makes Jeff stand out, and what for me was the whole point of the artistry when I was younger, was this notion that
there are so many Garys
it is an extension
in these videos. I think there's 3 Garys. Yeah.
Your personality.
What he's making is stuff he makes out of love, and that's always been present in everything that he does. I think that's just one of the things that makes the games lovely, that makes the games are so integral to Jeff, and Jeff is so integral to the games.
Obviously, I was a big fan of Jeff from the 80s. I think he was one of the main reasons I got a Commodore 64 after having a Spectrum. After seeing, I think, Sheep in Space and Revenge of the Mutant Camels, I thought,
so we've got, we've got other game developers, we've got members of the British video game media, and really we've got a lot of Llamasoft fans, in these videos, because what I think is so important is, especially with this introductory video, is to kind of set the stakes for the reader, or for the player, as it were, about why are we talking about this person? Why are we here? Especially because we can't really assume that everybody who plays these is going to know who Jeff Minter is. I hope that there's people that are going to be coming out of Making of Karateka saying, you know what, never heard of Jeff Minter, never played a single game, but having experienced what Digital Eclipse did with Making of Karateka, I'm in for this as well. That's my dream anyway. Yeah. Yes. So we have, photographs of the street that Jeff grew up on, and a little bit about the small English town that he grew up in. The fact that it was literally on the border of the UK's major atomic weapons facility. Maybe that had something to do with the fact that he made games starring farm animals setting off massive explosions. I really don't know.
Could I just make one comment?
Please, yeah.
So I hope people are noticing how cool this menu system is.
Oh, yeah, yes.
And shout out to Jeremy Williams, who devised this sort of pixelizer that you're seeing. With the depth of field effect. That is actually color space running. So we did a record session with color space. It takes every pixel in the game and it turns it into a texture, essentially, or a sprite. And then we apply math to that, and that creates this wave. Put it on a plane. It's a 3D kind of plane. So the coolest thing about it is that is actually color space running. It's not a recording. It's not a video. Yeah. It is the game code running underneath the menu.
Yeah, that's awesome. Color space is one of Jeff's light synthesizers that was released for the Atari 8-bit computers. So that's what's running back there. And that's pulling from where, or where is it pulling the what is the seed that it's using to create the light synth patterns in the back of this?
It's one of the preset.
Oh, okay, sure.
Settings, and it is an actual sort of a playback recording of it. It's not being played in real time, but it's actually running. So yeah, it's. And
we actually said, if I skip ahead a little bit, to where color space is on the timelines, we actually yes. So this is a very thing that you'd find if you were to go to a museum. Sometimes there's a sign that's hey, there's something you haven't noticed about this exhibit. It's that, and so we put this in here you've been staring at color space this whole time. Yeah. And in fact, when we get into looking at color space too, we can talk about some of the stuff that you did. I do want to jump into Centipede. So the first one of the first 2 playable games that we have here. This is again for a very old computer called the Sinclair ZX81, which is very, very important to the British, video game, or really very important to the British video game scene, because consoles were very expensive and they weren't really that ubiquitous at that point. But the Sinclair ZX80 and the ZX81, they only cost £100. So really, for so many families in the UK, this was the first time they could get an actual computer into their homes to not only do computing tasks but play video games. Now, these things had membrane keyboards, like these horrible keyboards. They could barely do anything, but they were very popular because they really introduced the computer into British homes. And so Jeff loved Atari games, loved playing Atari arcade games, really wanted to play this game Centipede, but there was no Centipede machine near Jeff in rural England, and all he had seen were screenshots in magazines of what Centipede looked like. So he's like, well, I'll just go home and make it. So teenage Jeff goes home, makes Centipede, but kind of gets a lot of it wrong because he didn't realize that like the ship could move up and down. The game integrates, by the way, as you can see, the instruction manual here because it did not actually come with a printed manual. This was all integrated into the whole thing. And so again, so it's asking, hey, what speed do you want to set? So already, Dave, right, we run into a problem because you get this running and it says, what speed do you want?
Yeah, and obviously we don't have a keyboard on console, do we? I mean, you can have virtual keyboards or whatever, but we wanted to make it very simple. So with some hacking magic, we're able to essentially create a menu-driven system using the gamepad, simple up and down, and basically poking values to the game. You know, actually changing values in memory to simulate that.
We're not faking this, right? Like
No.
this is actually this is not a graphical overlay or anything like that. We're actually injecting the values into the game itself.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And so now you can use, and you always have the tips panel, which you can turn on and off. But this will always show you like what joystick or control pad command or button is now tied to what used to be a keyboard entry command. So I hit RT, I'm done. I'll say 15. I'll say 3 bases. That's the number of lives per game, and then I'll get prepared.
And then you'll prepare
Then
yourself.
I'll prepare myself. Yep. That is how slow this ran.
I was gonna say, is this running at actual speed?
I believe this is actual speed because this did need to be kind of speedy.
I think so, yeah.
Yep, and so Jeff, he had this game and he brought it down to a computer fair, and there was a publisher called DKtronics, and he's like, oh, I made this game, and they're like, oh, great, can we sell this for you? And so almost immediately, because this is kind of how this is what people wanted out of games for like the ZX81. See, the centipede gets to the bottom of the ship and he just died because you can't move up to avoid it. But that's essentially what people wanted, is they were like, we need ersatz, we need like fake versions of arcade games. Shout out to Norm Badillo, our incredible artist. I'm going to show you some of the stuff that Norm did, which was, and also shout out to, there's a VIC-20 collector who goes by the name Mayhem, and to Jeff himself, because Jeff Minter himself did a lot of scans of these very, very rare boxes and manuals for these very artisanal, hand-produced old Llamasoft games, and then additionally, so then Norm, our artist Norm, went in and just recreated these cassette tape boxes and things like that, so you can kind of see, the cassette tape case that this came in. We also had to add, I don't remember, Dave, we had to add spin, which we have not had spin before, so you can spin the game and read some of the sideways text. But it's just so beautiful, and this is so important to be able to see the digital sort of representation of like, well, this is what the physical media looked like when you got this game in hand.
And you'll see that for a lot of different games in here. You'll see, well, sometimes there's just naked cassette tapes.
Here's our cassette tape too.
Norm rebuilt the cassette tape in 3D.
He really spent
It's amazing
deal of time doing this and making it just beautiful. Yeah, I know.
Thanks, Norm.
Thank you, Norm. Thank you, Norm.
Norm also did other boxes like the Trax box and things like that, like the clamshell cases that early software came in that you may not have seen before. It looks a little different.
This in the background is a picture of an EKG of somebody with pericarditis. So any cardiologists out there who play this are going to see this and be like,
oh yeah,
they did the right, they did it right. And so so moving along, we get into the Commodore VIC-20, and the first games Jeff did this, the formation of the company Llamasoft. Once because he was giving his games to other publishers to publish, but then he just starts doing it himself, and we get a lot of these great vintage photos of Jeff. There's the man himself, going down to computer expos and setting up a table and selling his games. Defender, which was his, again, sort of unauthorized clone of the game Defender. This ends up, selling out at the show, and they had to hastily make more copies of the tapes. And like, again, this is what the tape, looked like originally, and this was all very homemade, kind of a process. And then, again, we make sure we have the manuals, and so when you're in the game itself, even with, going back to Centipede quickly, if we were to play the game and pause it and then go to the instruction manual, we yanked out those screenshots that you saw, so you can always sort of reference this if you want to reference it. And then you can always jump in, you just always hit play games and just jump into the game library if you just want to find a game and play it. And in this case, in the game library, we ranked everything in terms of the complexity, not the difficulty of the game, because some of these games are very simple to understand but very difficult to play. But the complexity rating is really about like, how much do you need to read the manual before you jump into this? So the light synths and things like that they have a high complexity rating because there's a lot that you can do. Dave, while you're here, I'll jump ahead a little bit because Dave is here now into, what do you think, Psychedelia or Color Space?
Color Space.
Color Space.
Yeah.
So I'll let you take the sticks on this one because there's a lot going on here.
Oh yeah.
So this was for the Atari 8-bit, like the 400, 800, 1200 XL. Mm-hmm.
As you can see, it's got four llama complexity.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has the visual, sensitivity or photosensitivity warning is specifically on this one. You'll see that at the beginning of the game. I mean, it's the photosensitivity warning is on these light synthesizers because you as the user have the power to generate all kinds of flashing color patterns in this.
That's on you.
Yes, right.
Please enjoy responsibly.
So the biggest challenge with Color Space was that I think it used like every key on the keyboard. There's a lot of modified keys, so a lot of shift and control even to turn things up and down as far as various settings. We really couldn't try and make all that happen with separate inputs on a controller, obviously. So, you have two choices. One is a virtual keyboard, which is awful, or we create a menu system, and that's what we have done. So as you can see, by pressing the left trigger, I've got a menu that pops up on the left. If I press the right trigger, a menu pops up on the right. We covered almost all of the features. There might be a couple more detailed features that aren't necessarily needed, but
what's important to also mention is that you might be familiar with Jeff's like visualizers, music visualizers for like the Xbox 360. Jeff Minter did the Xbox 360's music visualizer, the Jaguar CD, if you go back that far. Or Jaguar CD was VLM also, but the idea here is that this is not a visualizer where you input music and it reads the music and it spits stuff out. Yeah. This is entirely user controlled. This is like an instrument. So the idea is that like somebody would be putting on a concert and they'd have a guitar player and a drum player, and then they'd have a light synth player playing along with the music, reacting to the crowd, reacting in real time, and putting stuff up there. So it was very much on you to do this.
Yeah, that's the idea. So it's like you're an artist, and you're listening to a soundtrack, maybe Pink Floyd or something like that.
Right.
Everyone's just in awe as they're watching pixels fly around to the music, kind of thing. So really,
whether or not you're currently like high while you're doing that is entirely like up to the user, I think. Yeah.
Exactly, and so you can choose a bunch of different options to sort of get things set up and ready. And then, once you've decided, hey, I want to choose like this type of symmetry, quad, different primitives that you can show on the screen, stuff like that. And then you're sort of ready to go. So you go into this edit mode. And then when I'm in edit mode, I can then paint. So I'm going to get rid of that. And as you can see, I'm making these things happen. And I'm moving the cursor now around the screen while I'm holding the paint button down. If you're listening to music right now and it has a beat, you can sort of go along with the beat like this, and create a light show, right? So obviously we wanted to take things a little bit further because we have a lot of power in computers today, and we can do a lot more things with pixels. So we added a couple things. One is there's a soundtrack that lets you sort of listen to the music while you're doing this. So it's built right into the product. And so while that's playing, so we've got some music playing right now, but we can also change the render mode. We created a few different render modes that change the way the pixels are drawing. So this is now on a sort of 3D plane, right? So now you can see.
So this is still the Atari 8-bit code, but
this
you're
is,
taking
right.
advantage of modern scaling and
so
stuff
underneath,
like
you're still seeing, here's the original, right? So we're looking at the same pixels, right? But all we're doing is just changing the way that things are drawn to the screen.
Cool.
So, for example, Trip Towers creates this sort of like 3D kind of look to it, right?
that. And is this Tony Longworth's music?
I believe so. Yes.
Tony, is this your music? I know you're still out there.
Yeah, you let us know. Yeah, no, yeah. I think this,
so,
Props,
you
if, where it belongs.
And it gets really cool when you sort of, you just like go back to watch mode, and now it's playing one of the presets, and you can just kind of sit back. And the actual pixels and the brightness of the pixels are changing according to the waveform of the music right now. So you're kind of.
So there actually is now
Yes.
something of a visualizer built in if you leave it
Exactly.
on like a demo mode
So,
and.
Again, there's original mode, and then here's
Right.
Wicked Cool mode, right? So.
Tony
yeah.
says he does not think this is his music.
Oh, okay.
Tony,
so-
we will assume that you will use your music when you play with Color Space.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and just real quick, you can also record. So if I wanted to make a recording, I just pressed the Y button to start recording, and I'm painting, right? And then I can stop that, and then I can play it back. So this is the recording I just made. So, if I wanted to do my own sort of patterns, change all the settings, record that, and then I can have my own custom
Nice.
look and feel, right?
Tony says he does not believe it's his music, but he'll gladly take credit for it.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
Yeah.
excellent. So like a lot more, even if you still have the original Color Space running, this is a lot more. This does more.
Yeah, and this is this is so important to the Jeff story. You don't want to get He really spent a great deal of time and energy and focus for a while in the mid '80s on light synthesizers. He really poured a lot of himself into that. So to be able to give people the ability to play with those again in a way that you can just simply do it all with your controller, all with your Nintendo Switch or whatever you want to do. And so this was actually funny, this Deflex, because it's not playable, but this was like the first version of this game called Deflex that Jeff ever made. And we asked him, like, this is sort of lost media, this original version for the Commodore PET. Can you do like a screenshot mock-up of what it would have looked like? So he recreated the entire game. He reprogrammed the whole thing for the PET, and then he actually uploaded it and put it on it's on the Internet Archive. But now I can say, like, he did that because we were doing this project, and that's what I got when I asked for a screenshot, was the whole thing. So I got my screenshot. It's authentic. Yeah, so, and then, it gets into the Vic 20 and all these really interesting games, a lot of Spectrum games. I really love, I think Headbangers Heaven is in the next one. I'm going to jump into that. Let's also watch a little bit of Jeff himself, because there wasn't a lot of Jeff in that first video.
That's true.
When I was in school, I dabbled in lots of various things. I got a skateboard, and I was a skater for a while, really enjoyed that. I wasn't even aware of the link between computers and video games, really. And it's only because I walked into this room one day in college, and there's one guy sat down the end with this weird thing which looked like a telly on top of a typewriter keyboard. Appeared to be playing some kind of crude game on it, and I was a bit curious, went over and asked him, where did that game come from? And he said he types it in. That was the moment that completely changed my life. I really enjoyed the act of programming. I thought that I'd finally found something that I actually had some kind of genuine aptitude for. But out of the whole sixth form college, we only had one machine, which was a Commodore PET. And officially, you had to book up half-hour slots. You could have 1 half-hour slot a day, and that wasn't really enough time for me to get stuff done. I mean, the thing is, back then, the Commodore PET was quite expensive. And I didn't come from a rich family. There's no way that our family could have afforded a computer, and there's no way I individually could afford a computer. I only had pocket money at the time, didn't have a job. And then this item came on the news and showed Clive.
That's the one public domain image of
Is
Clive
it?
Sinclair that exists.
The idea of actually
There's that, and I mean, I looked and looked and looked, and it was pretty much that. And you know, clearly Paul had found the same thing for his footage as well.
It actually arrived on the same day as my A-level results, and I remember just forgetting all about my A-level results and tearing open the box from Sinclair and spending the rest of the day sat in front of my ZX80, having a wonderful time.
So again, like, you know, if we just we should do actually 3D while you're here before we move on.
Sure.
So the first playable game that you'll encounter is, and this is, I mean, here's the thing. So even Jeff of this game, he is just like, this game is bad. He's just like, why would anyone want to play this game? It's a 3D maze game where you go it's a pseudo 3D game. It's one of those like 3D dungeon exploring kind of things where you're just walking through a 3D maze and it's sort of drawing a perspectival first person kind of thing in front of you. But before we get into this, I'm going to change it back to, I'm going to turn first-person shooter input mode off. I'm going to turn boost mode off.
So this is as authentic as...
This is what now when Jeff said this game is bad, like this is what it was like to play this game. Like, let's get into the maze. Oh, why did that go so fast?
You didn't save it. So go back. Go to game settings. Turn
Off, and then
hit accept.
And then accept instead of go back. Yes.
Yes.
Apply settings,
Okay.
restart game. Okay, so I get into the maze. All right, here we go. I'm getting into the maze. Let's go. Here we go. Hang on.
I am setting the maze.
Hang on, wait for. Sorry, I take a while. In all of these games, you can hear Jeff talking to you. They're all so personal, and you hear Jeff speaking to you when he's writing these lines in these games, even in the instruction manuals, things like that. Okay, here we go. All right, we did it. Okay, we're in the maze. All right, great. Okay, let's move north. So Jeff, I think, did this as a technical challenge to himself. Like, can I create one of these 3D maze games, you know, on the ZX81? But ultimately, I mean, that is how long it takes to render every single screen, which is why he was like, nobody would ever do this. So, you know, Dave, maybe you can talk a little bit about what we do.
Yeah, so first of all, we added a boost mode, which is a 50x CPU cycle speed.
You're overclocking by 50 times?
Yep.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So, and as you can see, the drawing is a lot faster. And the second thing we did is we added this sort of FPS mode so that when you're moving forward, so in the original game, you would press a key to look in a direction. So you had to use your brain and say, all right, what direction am I facing again? You're always looking at the screen to see what direction you're facing, and then you would, you know, press the enter key to move forward. You press the enter key to move forward, and then you'd press another key to face the direction. So it was an absolute kind of thing, and yeah, it just wasn't a great experience, and it was easy to get lost and forget, you know, where am I looking? So we took all the input methods that are used in that game, and we remapped them to using your controller with the left analog to move forward and use the right controller. And we always know what direction you're facing, so we can say relative to that direction, what you know, how do you turn left, how do you turn right from that direction. So you know, once we added the 50x boost and we added the FPS mode, it was like, wait, this game is actually really playable. Right. It really sort of opened things up, and now you can sort of zip through it. You know,
right.
It's not a hard game to get to the end. You sort of have to work your way up to floor 10 and just find the exit, and now it can be finished in, you know, like 30 seconds.
Instead of 2.5 hours.
If you have a good run, you know.
And in fact, I think we put in an achievement for finishing this. So if you're a score hunter, you actually have to. Yeah. But it won't be that difficult. Yeah, so that's that. This is hilarious. I really want to talk about this. So Jeff wrote a book that was like a history of Llamasoft. There was this amazing, a lot of the quotes are kind of from that book about him in his own words explaining what he was doing. And I hit on this quote, and I'm like, this is so wonderful because, we are telling a British story. This is a story about British game development. It takes place in Britain. The environment, the politics of Britain affect the games that you are playing. Like, again, that's why it's so important to do this sort of thing in this interactive documentary format, because when you have that context around why does this game exist and what was it that influenced the making of this game, it's so much more interesting. And so I find this line about tea. The lines of code flow out on a river of tea. It's like this is the fuel that powers the British software business is cups of tea. And of course, for us it's coffee, but in Britain it's tea. And I was just like, this illustrates so well. Of course, it's this lovely written paragraph, and it illustrates, I think, so well just one of those little cultural differences between the place and the time and the people we're reading about, and if you're not in Britain, the contrast. And so I went on the internet and found a public domain image of a mug of tea that was actually taken by Evan Amos, who's the guy who does all of the photographs of the public domain pictures of like video game consoles that we will often use. And he also did public domain images of like foods and things like that for similar purposes, that people could just use to illustrate in their projects without having to get a license or whatever. And so we had this wonderful picture of a cup of tea, and I dropped it in, and we also it was like a Lipton tea bag, and so we drew a little llama on the tea bag just to get rid of the Lipton logo, all that kind of stuff. So fine, right? And so we send off a build to Jeff, and I'm thinking to myself, oh no, I'm not thinking about this quote at all. But I'm thinking about the fact that I've literally just sort of written like a biography of somebody, and I'm now sending it to this person. And oh no, he's going to come back with. I'm prepped for notes. You know what I mean? I'm ready for notes. I'm ready for this didn't happen that way. You got this out of order. That's not what I think about this. This misrepresents me. We got to put this in. You're missing that. You're missing this. I'm ready for the notes. And I get back an email. Yeah, this is good. But that cup of tea that has to go. There's no milk in it, and the tea bag has been left in the tea. Very un-British, unacceptable. And that was the only actionable note. On the one hand, that felt great that I had apparently accurately represented Jeff's life to the point that he was like, yeah, okay, this is fine. But the one thing was the tea did not work. So I went onto Amazon and we bought a mug of tea with a British flag on it, and I got some PG tips. That's the little pyramidal tea bag that's not in the tea, but off to the side as an illustration. And then, as you can see, we went into Mike Micah's office and we put some Llamasoft games and some Commodore 64 stuff in the background. And then of course, made sure that you could see that the tea had the proper amount of milk in the tea, making it a proper British cup of tea.
So what you're saying is this should be the poster if we do a collector's edition physical for this.
I think so.
This is the definitive image for this collection.
This shows where the British video games come from. They come from inside the mug of tea. So, but it's good. But I mean, it's a wonderful note to get because it then inspires you to do something even better and more ridiculous than you had initially thought of doing.
And what was Jeff's response to this retake?
I think, because he didn't complain after that, so he must be fine.
No,
he must be fine with it. He must be fine with it. Yes, it's really been lovely to work with, with Jeff, on this. And I mean, as he has said, he wouldn't have had he wouldn't have been able to do this himself. You know what I mean? And so for us to be able to come in, get these games playable again, tell this story the way that it was, it's been really fun. So again, we get into, so then there's Gridrunner. If you played a Jeff game prior to Tempest 2000 and you were living like America, there's a good chance that what you played was Gridrunner. This is Centipede again. It's Jeff, continuing to iterate on the Centipede formula, but now much more much more complicated and more difficult, which is his whole thing. And we reached out. I mean, Norm worked on this, but the borders, you'll see that usually what we do is we'd have special borders for every kind of console that you're playing the games on. But in this case, it's like most of these, a lot of these old British computing platforms did not have their own monitors. They were there. You would just hook them up to your TV set. So it's like, okay, well, what sort of TV set might have been in use in a British home, at that time? And so that's kind of what we're thinking of here. So yeah, it's Gridrunner, it's Centipede, it's Fast and Furious. There was, a little inside baseball here, but there was a moment, in the making of this whole collection where there was a question as to whether or not we were going to be able to do VIC-20.
Really?
And yeah, and from my perspective, it was, this is why, I think having that, I'm arguing for my own job here, but this is why, having that editorial core of the project is important, because it's really founded on the research and the knowledge. And it's no, we have to have VIC-20. VIC-20 is that would be like doing a Nintendo collection and not having the NES. VIC-20 is the system that birthed Llamasoft. I mean, this is Jeff's first love. The VIC-20 version, he will tell you, this is the canonical version of Gridrunner as far as Jeff is concerned. Most people might have played the Commodore 64 version. Perfectly good version, but he was well, I kind of knocked that out pretty quickly, and the VIC-20 version, he's more pleased aesthetically with the width of the lines
the
of
big
this
chunky
version
graphics
versus the Commodore 64 version, which again, that sort of comes up, it's sort of buried. But what's so important is there's so many versions of this game, but it's what is the canonical version, and it's as a play, as the player, it's we want to point you towards that. We want you to understand, which ones you should be looking at. And of course, we have all these great vintage photos from Jeff of him wearing a Gridrunner shirt while on holiday in the south of France. And there's a whole video all about Gridrunner. Oh yeah, Headbangers Heaven. I love this. This is the Sinclair Spectrum version. I'll go through the introduction here. Let's see. Let me bring up the Y for instructions. So this is incredibly funny. It's very Monty Python-esque humor. In fact, I think it even references Monty Python at some point.
My brain hurts.
And so the pun of this is called Headbangers Heaven. And he is a headbanger in the sense that he likes heavy metal music, but he's really more more to the point. He enjoys being banged on the head with heavy metal hammers. And so in this game, it doesn't actually have anything to do. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy references, dotted throughout this. This is all extremely funny. And so the game has very little to do with heavy metal music, and it's actually about hammers are falling from the sky. I'm gonna. This is great, but I'm gonna skip past it because it goes a little slow. And so hammers fall from the sky, and you have to dodge the hammers to get over to the money bag, and then get the money bag back to the other side of the screen, right? Okay, great. But the twist is that, see, I just got hit on the head by a hammer, but Chico likes it. He enjoys getting hit square on the head with a hammer. That is good. And when that happens, that's a curative hammer, but it caused my pain meter to go down. As your pain meter goes up, your score goes up. And so your score multiplier goes up. So you actually want to get hit square on the head with the hammers so you can get your money bag back and get a higher score when you deliver the money bag. Now, if you get hit on the head, or if you get hit anywhere other than the head, then you die. So really, you're only trying to get hit on the head. And then, of course, if you get hit on the head too many times, you also die, because no matter how much he enjoys pain, there's only so much of it that the human body can actually endure. So I got hit somewhere other than the head, and I'm sorry. I think I simply got hit too many times and died. But I love it. It's so funny. This is the one I always kind of talk about when people say, describe an interesting Llamasoft game. But so then Jeff gets into farm animals, and basically you start seeing things like Revenge of the Mutant Camels. This is, again, admittedly, a take on he read a review of the game Empire Strikes Back for the Atari. Oh, sorry, this is Revenge of the Mutant Camels. That's a different game. Attack of the Mutant Camels was a game in which you attack mutant camels, which were sort of based on the AT-ATs from Star Wars. And then Revenge of the Mutant Camels, you get to be a mutant camel and fire against waves of wacky, weird enemies all the time. I keep jumping for some reason because I keep
hitting the jump button.
I keep hitting the jump button.
That might be
hitting
it,
the
yeah.
jump button. That would do it. But there's just, there's 42 Llamasoft games here, so there's just so much to go through. And again, like these photographs of like what did the Llamasoft booth look like at these computer shows? You know, as these computer shows grow and grow and grow, you know, Jeff's booths kind of stay the same size, and they retain the sort of handmade, literally just like llama rugs and shawls that he bought in Peru and stuffed llamas and things like that. When the Llamasoft fans would, you know, hang out with him at these things. It was very much a sort of a community event. Norm did a great job, by the way, with these menu videos, and I really loved this one, which is super Monty Python X Katamari Damacy, using the great airbrush artwork of Steiner Lund, who did a lot of the airbrushed artwork that's very closely associated. There's Jeff on his recumbent bicycle. Just so many amazing pictures and things like that. So Jeff he goes to Peru. He finally gets to hang out with an actual llama, and develops light synthesizers. I think having his mind opened while he was on vacation in Peru. Had a lot of time, I think, spent on planes and buses to sort of think about making video games versus actually making the video games, and so kind of came back with a lot of ideas. So again, Jeff really connected very closely with his fans. He made these newsletters on what looks to be his Macintosh. Yeah, for sure. Would do these newsletters and mail them out. So we've got like scans of the newsletters, and so you can you can spend as much time as you want. If you just sort of want to go through and just sort of look at everything on a high level, perfect. If you want to sit there and like read every review of Iridus Alpha, you could also do that. And so it's like how much time do you want to invest? Molly and Flossie, very famous sheep. The first two sheep that Jeff got, he had to. There's a sad story where he had to leave them behind because he went to America. We don't actually cover this because we end with Tempest 2000, but after Tempest 2000, he did move to America for a little while and to go be an employee of Atari, and was like, this is not for me. I can't be an employee of a company. Like I can't have somebody telling me what kind of games to make. I need to just make my own thing. So he went back to Wales. He went back to the farm. Rejoined his family and his friends, and just kept doing what it is he wanted to do. Tripitron, we don't have Tripitron in here. That's a very, very complicated light synth for the Atari ST. We are able to represent some Atari ST games though, because there's essentially ports of them to the Atari Jaguar, and so for stuff like Super Gridrunner. This was a port that was done for the Jaguar, and so that's how we're able to get the Atari ST in here, which is cool.
Yeah, a number of people that played Atari 50 were disappointed that we didn't have ST represented, and so that was something that we put on our wish list. Like, next time we get the opportunity to make ST games playable in any form, we got to take it.
Right.
And this was the perfect example. A number of people said, "Oh, I played his stuff on the Amiga. How come there's no Amiga?" Well, we do have limited resources. We have to pick our targets sometimes, and the ST was the one we were like, we can cover the most important games from the Amiga and ST era for Jeff by being able to do the ST versions the way that we did. So hopefully people really enjoy playing them, because it's a thrill to see these games. I never had an ST when I was a kid. I've never even touched one. So it was super cool to be able to check out things like Llamatron 2112.
Right. Yeah, that's my favorite. One of my favorite games on here.
Yeah,
there's a twin stick mode that's enabled by default, which was supported in the original game, but you had to have two different joysticks connected, and it was not a very convenient or good feeling.
Twin stick mode is on.
Twin stick.
Oops. keep wanting to press start to like.
Yeah, and I mean this is another one where he's wearing his influences on his sleeve, very much Eugene Jarvis, in the same way that he was inspired by Defender. He's like, you know what? I also love Robotron 2084. I want to do a version of that, but I want to do it for the computers that you already own, and you don't need to buy an arcade machine. You know,
we're twin sticking it, playing Llamatron.
Now, if you want to go back to other controls, there is a default control scheme in here for people who still have the muscle memory for the ST version.
Right. Yeah, we always want to make sure that often we don't turn some of this stuff on by default because we'd rather default to the original. But in some cases, like 3D, we know that what's going to happen is people are going to get into it and they're going to like. They're just going to start playing and they're going to kind of bounce off of it because they're going to be like, what is this? Is this broken? You know? So in that case, FPS mode is turned on, boost mode is turned on.
It's not broken, it's just authentic.
Right, yeah. So yes, Llamatron, excited to have that. A big one, and if you've heard me talk about this game at all so far, you've heard about this. But so Jeff spent a very long time in the late 80s working on a game console launch that never happened. It was going to be called the Conx Multisystem, and he was going to do a launch game. He was going to do a new version of Attack of the Mutant Camels for the Conx Multisystem, and the console never came out. And he spent a great deal of money, a great deal of time working on this. And so for the first time, officially in a release, you're actually playing Attack of the Mutant Camels '89. For the Conx Multisystem, a game that never came out, a demo of a game that never came out, really, on hardware that never came out. And this is because there were some really dedicated Conx, fans out there who were able to build a Conx emulator that we were able to license and integrate into our Eclipse engine, and we're actually able to get this happening. And they built the emulator based on. They didn't have the hardware; they had the system specs of what it was supposed to be, and then they had Jeff's source code for this game. And by comparing and contrasting those, they were able to figure out essentially how it worked and getting a real emulator running. So it's really exciting to have this in here. You can switch your. There's a lot in here. I mean, really, it's like he could have finished this up. Attack of the Mutant Camels is a fairly simple game of waves of camels. So it was like. It's not done, but it's kind of close, and you can swap all your weapons and things like that. Really
it's certainly playable. Yeah.
That pencil sketch. I mean, that is literally Steiner Lund was going to be doing the cover artwork for this thing. That was his original pencil sketch, so we decided to sort of put that on a fake, floppy disk label to show that that's what this would have shipped on. Yes, the Conx Multisystem was a console, but it was going to have games on floppy disks. And we've got, a really nice version of the original, what was going to be the cover art as well, and even the picture of the camel that he took to base the cover art off of. So really, really wonderful stuff that we got from Steiner for this. Before we close out,
we're running out of time.
I mean, we are running out of time, and I guess we could play a little bit of Tempest 2000, but I'm actually going to kind of skip that because what I really want to show off is what Mike, our studio, has done.
Right on.
And so we always want to try to add something new with Making of Karateka. We had Karateka Remastered and Death Bounce Rebounded. That was done by Dave and Jeremy, Death Bounce. And so for this one, Gridrunner Remastered, Mike has done a gorgeous new version of Gridrunner, sort of based on the Commodore 64 style graphics, but sort of given the same kind of upgrade that, we did with Color Space and Psychedelia as far as, taking advantage of how we can render stuff out in modern hardware. And so if you want to get into playing, if you've always felt, I want to get into playing Gridrunner, I don't know where to start, this could be a good start for you.
Yeah, Mike had said, how do I bring Gridrunner into what people know from Tempest 2000 and his modern games? Like, if Jeff were reapproaching Gridrunner C64 now, what might it look like?
Yeah.
So you see the explosions are llamas and skulls and, fun things that you can do with 3D effects like you mentioned.
Yes. And the important thing is, at Digital Eclipse, we have a pretty, staunch commitment to being as accurate as we possibly can at every turn, right? Like, the commitment to accuracy. And so as you're playing this, you might be thinking, gee, this really does feel like, Jeff's original Gridrunner. And that's because it actually is Jeff's original Gridrunner. This is actually running. This is the actual game. This is actually running the Commodore 64 code. And you can switch back and forth between this. And so what's going on underneath all of this is Jeff's original Commodore 64 game. And so that's why it feels authentic, because it totally is authentic.
Yeah.
We are simply swapping out the audio-visual experience to a new one while you are actually playing, you know, the actual original game from Jeff.
And
that's
another
so
note
it's-
on that is, like, if you're playing the original version, you'll notice that the ship sort of jumps cell by cell, right? So you don't see any movement in between the grid lines. So, you know, just a simple thing that we did was interpolate the position of the ship so that it it moves very smoothly, and that sort of brings that into, you know, current technology
Expectations,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You know, that's just one little thing that we
and
do.
there's and also it's like one of the things that Gridrunner adds to the Centipede formula is ships on the side and the bottom that are firing at you while you're trying to play the game, and they're trying to like kill you, you know, as you're navigating. In Gridrunner Remastered, they're still shooting at the same times for the same duration, but you see the shot warming up. Whereas you don't get that in the Commodore 64 version, so it gives you a little bit of extra like warning of like, hey, this is going to happen. So it's a good way to sort of learn the rhythms of how to play it and get a little bit more information. One of the final thing here is this controller keeps going off, but that's fine because we're almost done. So we couldn't include playable versions of every single game for various reasons, whether that was technological or licensing or cost or various things like that. So like, you know, the VIC-20 version of 3D Labyrinth is not included. This particular version of Blitzkrieg is not included. So the idea here is we have the full Jeff Minter Gameography, which just walks you through with screenshots. And so for the game tracks, you know, we've got the VIC-20 version, and we've got, actually, let me I can turn the captions back on. You know, it's like, here's the VIC-20 version, here's what the Spectrum version looked like, etc. So even for things like this weird VIC-20 version of Breakout where his initials are the bricks, you know, we can at least show this to you so that you can understand. And as you sort of scroll down, you'll just sort of see the iterations and the evolutions of Jeff's games as you're going through. And so this just lets us be totally comprehensive in a way that we can't simply with the playable versions of the games that are in here. Things like Defender 2, which we do not have the license to have Defender, but we're going to show you the screenshot because we just want to sort of educate you about, like, you know, this is where, you know, or stuff like the Atari Falcon, which, like, we could have published if we supported the Atari Falcon, which I'm sorry we don't.
Yeah, somebody asked. They were like, "Oh, where's Llamasoft?" Like, you know, everybody has a favorite game that they want to see. Tempest 3000 is the one that has been brought up the most because it was on this rare platform called the Nuon that was built into DVD players. So a lot of people are like, I have never had the chance to play that, or I played it once and I don't have a Nuon equipped DVD player anymore.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, scope is scope, and there's just only so much we can do.
Special shout out to, I wanted to show the VLM video too. Special shout out to Drew Scanlon, who is in the room with us today, because I brought in my Nuon and I brought in my copy of Tempest 3000 so we could like capture some video or screenshots. And where is that VLM video? Is it all the way to the right? We realized that to get the VLM running on the Nuon, you had to have the remote control. Like, you couldn't use the Nuon controller. You had to have the remote control. And where did we put that thing?
I don't know.
It's so complicated, even I forget where the hell anything is. Because we did a video that shows sort of the history. Oh, maybe it's in here. Because we started with the Jaguar, maybe? See, and as you explore Llamatron, or Llamasoft, the Jeff
please,
Minter
if you
story,
find this.
If you find this video, please let me know. No, it was here, VLM through the years. So there's a video, this is one of the videos that's directed by Paul that's about, I'm sorry, this is not even a video. It's been a long time since I did this, and there's so much in here. This is a screenshot from a video that Jeff provided us with of the first virtual light machine, the first visualizer that he did, and it was for a very sort of like bespoke computing platform from 1990, and so we can't. I mean, basically nobody can like use this thing again unless you were to set up this like this weird kind of system called a transputer. But we have video of it, and we have video of. So this is what all of the VLMs looked like, so we can kind of see the evolution. But yeah, Drew realized. We realized we needed the remote to get the Nuon VLM going, and fortunately Drew had purchased a universal remote, and fortunately we were able to like program it to work on Toshiba DVD players, and it worked. And we were able to get the VLM going. So like we have, so this is some like emulated footage of the Jaguar's VLM1. And then VLM2 was for the Nuon, so we've got some, recordings of like what did the VLM2 look like. And so again, where it can't be, interactive, we will at least try to show it in a video in this way, kind of jumping through stuff. And then this is the only footage that we or anybody really have of Unity, aka VLM3, which is a GameCube project that Llamasoft was working on with Lionhead, which was Peter Molyneux's studio. A lot of people were like, "Are you gonna have Unity in here?" I'm like, you know what? As much as I wish that Jeff like pulled out a GameCube dev kit and was like, "Yeah, here you go, play Unity," and that was not to be. And then of course Neon, which was the name of the VLM for the Xbox 360. And so this is really showing the evolution, and also just really cueing, some people don't know that like Jeff made, the Xbox 360 music visualizer, but now you can, a lot of people, millions and millions of people saw this, right? But now you can see like, this is where it came from, this was the evolution of the whole thing.
Sure.
So we were glad to get that in there as well.
I'd like to say this is the last time you have to go through the spiel, but
Oh,
that's
no, there's no
absolutely
way.
not the case, because this weekend in San Francisco, we're going to be part of Day of the Devs. You can get free tickets to this event if you're in or anywhere near San Francisco. It's dozens of indie games, and we were invited to bring Llamasoft there, so we will be there. Chris will be there. We'll be demoing this. You can play any of these things that we've talked about. That's this coming Sunday in San Francisco. Go to our Twitter, at Digital Eclipse. We've got all of the information and links there. Also, we've got some other stuff going on at GDC as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yes. So let's see. We're gonna be at the SF MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco, twice, which is kind of blowing my mind. But on Monday night of next week, and this event is unfortunately sold out, but we're going to be presenting this on stage, Day of the Devs SF MoMA. We're going to be kind of doing a stage presentation, kind of similar to what I just did, really, but to an audience, essentially explaining the work that we're doing with interactive documentaries. But then on Tuesday, there's a pop-up gallery at SF MoMA that you can go in if you have museum admission, and this is open to everybody. You don't have to be going to GDC or anything like that. You just got to pay admission to the SF MoMA on Tuesday, March, 19th? I think.
19th.
I'm
Correct.
confused about numbers. But we're going to have Making of Karateka there as part of this pop-up gallery put on by the Mix of like indie games, and so that's exciting. So we get to have both Llamasoft and Making of Karateka in the SF MoMA during GDC week, which is going to be great. So yeah, and then also tune in to the Game Developers Choice Awards, which is on next Wednesday night during GDC, because Making of Karateka is up for the Innovation Award. So you can tune in on Twitch's or GDC's Twitch channel, rather, if you want to watch those awards. Maybe there'll be a shot of us in the audience losing to The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, you never know.
Yep.
Or maybe we could lose to somebody else. We
don't
know
Baldur's
who we're
Gate
going to
3.
lose
We could
to.
lose to anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, lots happening during GDC, but importantly also, before GDC even happens, Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story, will be available on March 13th. So you don't even have to go to Day of the Devs to play it. You can just play it in the privacy of your own home, assuming you purchase it. Which you should.
So we're less than 48 hours away from the launch of this project. People have already asked when on Wednesday will it be out. Do not wait for, this is not a midnight drop. This is going to be probably somewhere in the vicinity of noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, based on our earlier ones. And again, it might be a little bit later than that, because most of us are on the West Coast, so we generally wake up and then launch the game so that we're awake enough to support it. So yeah, it'll probably be midday-ish We'll let you know as soon as it's available.
4 p.m. GMT.
4 p.m. GMT? All right, so you guys can go about your day and then say, cough, cough, I'm sick in the UK, and then go home and then download it when you get there. It is coming out for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and X, as well as Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC, both on Steam and GOG. These are all digital. Wednesday is the digital launch. Many people have asked, and we love it because we want you to have that permanence too. Is there going to be a physical edition? The physical edition is in the planning stages. We don't have any information about it. There's also a making of Karateka in the planning stages. Limited Run Games has been announced as our partner for that. We're hoping to have information on both of these later on in the year. Don't have any ETA on exactly when. Don't know what the physical editions are going to look like, what's going to be involved in them.
Think of them
It's
as
an
more
extra
like
step.
they're like special collectibles that are coming later versus, you know what I mean? Like, it's if you want to play this game now, like you should get the digital version.
Yeah, I wouldn't wait because it's not like, oh, next month. It's not that soon. These things take time, especially, remember, we're a small studio. So we have a lot of things going on that we cannot tell you right now. A lot of maybes, a lot of almosts, and a lot of things that are already greenlit that we will be revealing later this year, and we're excited to do that. But yeah, we are a multi-headed beast that you might shoot in a Jeff Minter game, frankly, and we have a lot of things going on. But the main thing that we have going on this week, Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story, it will be out on Wednesday. Thank you so much for your support. You can pre-order it on Switch and Xbox. You can wish list it on PlayStation and PC. We ask that whatever is appropriate for you to do, please do that. People have already told me that they've gotten the Xbox version, and it's preloaded at about 4 gigs, so you know what to expect there. If you're playing on PC, you can use Xbox X input controllers natively on GOG. Obviously, if you use Steam, you can also use Switch and PlayStation controllers because there's a layer there that Steam provides that lets you do that. But if you are wondering what is the controller that will work on all PC versions, an Xbox-style controller will work on all PC versions. If you have any other questions, we do have a small FAQ that is on our Twitter that we've been passing around. You know, where is Tempest 3000? What about Atari VCS? Things like that. But also, we have a list of all 43 games that are in this project at our website. It's digitaleclipse.com. Just go to the Games tab, and you can see all of the information about everything that we've done. We have probably done games that you didn't realize we were behind, that we've done. Mega Man, Street Fighter, SNK, Samurai Showdown, Disney, several Disney collections, things like that. So hopefully you see something, you go, oh, I didn't realize that was you, but I enjoyed it. You know, that's our goal. So thank you so much for goofing off with us for an hour. Again, this will be out in 2 days. Hopefully you like what you've seen. And maybe this takes you back if you're a British gamer. Maybe this is all brand new to you. We are assuming it's all brand new to you, and we want you to walk through that digital museum and see. You know, it's not just there's a crown and a ring in a case somewhere. You know, who's the dead monarch that belongs to. There's going to be like context for all that stuff. So if you haven't seen a Commodore PET before, there's a little explanation. This is the Commodore PET. This is why the Commodore PET is important. And you'll hear Jeff talk about the Commodore PET. We want to give you all of that backstory so that you understand why this stuff matters and how this fits into the building block of your personal gaming history, what came before what you played, and how it influenced what you already love. So thank you so much, Dave. Thanks for hanging out all hour long, because I know that you've got other stuff to do. Yeah, Chris, thanks for anchoring and talking nonstop for an hour. That's awesome. Drew, thank you for running the stream.
Thanks to everybody who just really gave their all to make this another. I mean, I'm so proud of the team and what everybody's accomplished on this, because just everybody is always just thinking about, okay, well that works, but how can we make it better? How can we make it cooler? How can we go the extra mile? So I hope that, you know, when you guys finally get your hands on this on Wednesday, you see just all the love that's been poured in, I think, from every aspect of it, from engineering to editorial to art. You know, it's just we put a lot into this, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we really believe this is what video game history deserves, and we really want to fight to make this the model, and to, you know, just get everybody on board with, like, this is how you treat classic games as the works of art that they are. You know, treat them with more respect, and to do it this way.
Yeah. All right, we're 10 minutes late for another meeting. So bye, everybody. Thanks again. Please do not be shy about telling people how excited you are about this this particular release, and feel free to spread our social media messages. We're everywhere. I mean, we are everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and Mastodon. We post on all 6 of those on a regular basis. So if you have questions or if you want to amplify our messages, we would love that. We want everybody to enjoy this. The price is $29.99 USD. We try to make our prices low enough that you have no excuse not to pick it up and support these kinds of projects. So thank you if you've already done it, or if you're thinking about doing it. Hopefully this has pushed you over. We will talk to y'all later. We got to go to that meeting. Bye, everybody. Thanks very much. We'll see you next time.